Welcome to Arc Rex Temple of Ages, the InBetween show, part 2. Welcome back, everybody, and hello, everybody. Man, life has been interesting lately, and so many things have been going on, and I wanted to make this so much sooner than where we're at right now, yet here we are. And honestly, I've been vibing in the delays because in the last presentation it was kind of a different vibe than is usually there, and it led me down a lot of different rabbit holes and reflective thinking, and just having the delays and it not happening right then and there actually makes me very happy, and I'm very glad it happened that way, and I'm continuing to lean into that. And I think that it's all going to happen anyway at some point. It's just like that's been happening since I pretty much put this meme in every presentation, is that it's going to keep being delayed, and that delaying is actually our saving grace, because if the chaos just all came in right now, then there wouldn't be any reaction to it. And as the synchronicities are growing, and woo-wee have they been very, very strong lately, that we can kind of chart our course. And because it just seems like to me anyway, the day's just been flying by, and time itself is just going by so fast, and just to keep up with day-to-day life and add all this on top of it, because it's spring right now, I'm trying to plant plants, get back in shape, do a bunch of spring cleaning, start a new business, make these presentations, keep up with the modern events, diversify my assets, and, prepare so I can have a better standard of living, because that's the whole point of this channel and why I keep making it, even though it might seem goofy and unhinged at times. And just also adding on to the delaying part, because this was supposed to be made in April, and this was towards the beginning of April too. So it's been over a month. Yet, it feels so fast. I mean, it's so weird too, because I've been doing a lot of stuff since then, and it feels longer and shorter all at the same time. So time just feels really weird right now. And it's all this weird balance of watching the chaos kind of destroy and crumble our world, but also the opportunities and the thoughts of rebuilding it into something better. Because we can't leave this old, flawed system until it really, crumbles and dissipates itself. So there's room for the new system that the deadwood has been burned away. And once again, we're talking about the Tim Dillon show. And he says here, I bet another wave is coming. And it's going to hit me the same way. Wasn't the differential that we were going to prepare a little bit for this one? I'm confused. I'm genuinely confused. It's ravishing. The disintegration of the American system. The greatest comedy ever released. Truly, there's nothing funnier than this situation. And the simulation we keep going round and round in this circle game, and you're living through the cancellation of the planet Earth. And we blend that in with the Truman Show and all the other interesting vibes that we'll talk about in the rest of this video. This meme's really gonna earn its weight this presentation, because it really just keeps coming back to this whole idea of this serious time loop that has to do with the Matrix and fourth wall breaking and memes and dogs and clowns and death and all the things. And with that macro view, we go to the micro view and the boots on the ground, and the question of the journey that we find ourselves on. That we find ourselves on this burning circus tent of Titanic, and that's driven by this AI system that needs real human beings to give away their free will and kind of imprison themselves in their own digital prison. And that you can make your way out of the system, and the choice between the moral and the evil path in all this rising chaos, and trying to write a better narrative story, ourselves included, hopefully. And once again, talking about the meme I made about overcoming limitations and boxes that we're trapped in and allowing our imagination to be the answer to all this chaos and evil, and let it kind of be a superpower and just get past all the fear and really build this better, brighter future together, even if right now it just seems like overwhelming chaos. And that the key here really is that our minds are so powerful, it can manifest this better thing, but where attention goes, energy flows, and so much of it is caught up in this chaos. And if you were in a storm and the waves were rising, you would be paying more attention to the waves because there's less buffer room anymore, and you kind of have to pay attention if you want to keep on going the way you are. Yet, you can use your imagination to find new ways and solutions so you're not at the mercy of all this chaos, and you can get yourself out of these problems and boxes and matrix pods that it seems like the themes keep reappearing. And I just love this meme because it twists what already was, but in a very comedic way that can bring a smile and laughter to your face. At least it does to me. So that's kind of blending it even more, that the whole point of this channel is a better standard of living and bringing smiles to people's faces. And based upon the pre-media programming that I've seen about making this face, that it has the ability to control reality itself. And if you see me making this face at the beginning of and ending of these presentations, that's why. And that it can lead to freedom and rewriting this matrix or story that we find ourselves in. And it's interesting because it's kind of the expression of a vibration of happiness, and that how powerful that is. And its ability to change and manipulate matter, space, and time around us, because that's not as real as we think it is. And also on top of that, I keep talking about breaking the fourth wall and how that combines with the observer effect, memes, our consciousness, and our will, and that it allows the characters in a narrative structure to know that they're in a narrative structure. Like if you're reading Harry Potter and as you're reading it, he figured out he was in a book, and then he starts trying to talk to you through the book. Like if I somehow, if you're on the other side of the screen and I all of a sudden said, "Hey you, Doug, how you doing?" Or even weirder than that, if I just pointed up into the thin air and just pointed at like an observer from a different place. And that may seem funny, but all the angels are called watchers, and the demons are watching, the angels are watching, God's watching, we're watching. So, and how these memes, and especially in the show Invincible, because I'm going to talk about this in a bit, and we'll kind of get a little bit into what I'm trying to talk about here, how it blends everything. And that's what the AI is doing. That's what our minds are doing, because that's how powerful they are, and how it all blends together. And that this meme of mewing has been in the show, and it was acknowledged by the official channel itself, and has been kind of used as a joke that the characters in the show are aware of this meme, and that the meme has been growing ever since. And this show has a lot of memes about it, and that's one of the reasons I like it so much. And here there's kind of a link between the face and Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ, the idea of him is he rewrote the story and could manipulate matter, space, and time. So it's just this reverberating thing, and we just keep readdressing the same story. And it's interesting right here that one of the biggest things of the show is what happens to evil when it's exposed to humanity, or the goodness of humanity. And one of the overarching themes that it keeps presenting is that if you give goodness to evil, a lot of times evil will turn good. Because you show them the better way. You show them, hey, that there's this awesome place you can go to, and you can have friends, you can have community, you can have awesome food, and you don't have to be a monster and living this horrible life filled with violence and subjugation and control. Like, there's an alternative. And it's just that a lot of times these evil people have never seen the alternative. And it's just interesting that that's like a huge point in this show. And the memes have just been crazy. And it's interesting that we went from animation and now it's bleeding into our day-to-day lives and becoming more real as we go on, because we're bringing it to life. It might just seem like a silly YouTube video right now, yet through technology, this is becoming realer and realer and a more immersive experience day by day. And we're getting to the point where we have to ask ourselves, what really is real? And I've been asking that a lot because the AI videos are getting so good lately that imagination's pretty much already coming to life. And it might just be still stuck on this little black tablet screen, like the phone I'm holding right now or this computer, yet they're working really hard to make those microchips to put in our brains so that it's a very seamless experience. And back to the memes, that it just keeps happening, and we try to recreate the memes itself, so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that we're bridging this narrative structure into another narrative structure. And that's kind of the whole idea of memes, is that you make memes of other memes and you just keep adding new layers onto it. And we have to ask ourselves, what's the narrative structure that we find ourselves in, and what's going to happen when you start putting these together, and that a lot of people are going to be happy about it and a lot of people aren't. And how we all fit into this narrative structure, especially when because each of these superheroes are basically Superman from their own universe. So these really two popular shows, and how this other one about superheroes also is really drenched with memes. But the very interesting thing is they're very self-aware, and in the show itself, as a plot line, they talk about memes. Like, the superheroes get together, like the Justice League, even though they're evil, and talk about the memes being made about them by all the normie civilians. And it's also very interesting that they have a YouTube channel in our actual real life, and they made all these interesting little lore bits, like a fake podcast that doesn't actually exist, but they made that extra bit of media so it adds on to the universe. And there's not really a lot of shows that do this, that put this much effort into all this side material and world building, and to make their narrative structure more complete, but also combine it with our real world more and more, because this isn't just a TV show. Now it's on YouTube. Now it's being much more interactive and self-aware on a level that almost no TV show has before, and how we can extrapolate that to our own experience. So, I want to talk about the last presentation, because it was a bit heavier than it usually is, that there might have been a whole bunch of horrible things that were going to happen very soon. And it's very hard to say. The source I was using, I kind of admitted, is kind of the furthest reaches that you can go. Like, almost everything in it's a pretty far reach. That it has to do with synchronicity, your gut feeling, and it's very easy to be wrong. And honestly, I'm happy, like I said, that there was delays and I was wrong. And even though, like I said, I still think all those are going to happen anyway at some point, that also I was thinking it didn't make sense for it all to happen like on a day. So it was going to be spread out anyway. And I kind of figured that out beforehand, but life being life, and I'm still working towards all the solutions I was talking about in the last video, and that's been very time consuming. So trying to balance it all has been an interesting thing. Yet, like I was saying, it's all based upon this esoteric symbolism, and seeing numbers in patterns and making all these symbolic connections about what the individual is seeing. Yet right here, he got one right. So some of them are right. So that's why I was paying attention to it. And like the evil robot tank is probably going to happen, even though it might not have been on this day as we know it, that it might be something else, that those numbers might have been misinterpreted. Yet I always view it as, even if 20% of it is going to come true, that's still worth looking at. And all these other things happening as well. And I think as you watch the scene, it's sequential. That it's not all happening at once. Like it goes from the robot tank, that's one scene. And then it's another scene where it's trouble in the Middle East. And then it goes on to the flag ripping, which he equates to a civil war. And then a little plane shape. And then it goes to, tsunamis. And I was actually looking. It's so crazy how close I am to the line of where it is. This is a interesting future map that's kind of been synchronistic with me. And how it also lines up right here with the I-5 corridor. I mean, who could have guessed or wanted that? So that they could rebuild it into like a super cyber city AI control grid area. Who would want that? And just further on, and just also like what he assumes is an EMP, it's hard to tell if that's actually what that represents as well. So, where to draw the line on all of that, it's very personal and symbolic, and the general gist of it, I still think is going to happen all anyway at some level. It's just the question of timing. And, in a personal regard, what are we going to do about it? And because it still seems like I'm getting synchronicities about a lot of these things, yet, like I said, combined with the delays and the idea that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, and it's all playing out how it's supposed to be playing out, and it's going to work out into this crazy last-minute story that you never thought would have worked out, that was all a requirement for it, yet in the moment, your meat bodysuit can panic about it because you don't have the full picture. And just the interesting thing about these two is a lot of these right here are a magnitude of things that we haven't really seen very much in our lifetimes. That, at least in America, we haven't had any major tsunamis. We haven't had a world war in our lifetime. We haven't seen a robot uprising or advanced AI like we've been seeing it. We haven't seen a major EMP. We haven't seen a major president event, really. And, the true fourth wall breaking. So, but it just feels like with a lot of these, we're so close. And I'll get to the fourth wall breaking thing more later on and how that's kind of been coming into play. Yet, if we go back to all these things right here, I want to imagine that they're food dishes in a kitchen. And that so far, that if you think of any modern event as a food dish coming out of a kitchen, that so far they've been letting us sample the food, the people in the diner and the audience, for usually about a day or two. It's been speeding up and, going crazy, but they're still giving us about a day to digest everything and to soak it in, and for the cooks in the kitchen to kind of look out at the audience and suck in the louche and the energy and kind of look at our reactions to it. Because if it all happened within a really short time frame, like a day or two or something like that, it's kind of funny for me to imagine it. Because I was thinking about it, because it would be like, you turn on the TV and it's like, oh, something happened to the president, and then an hour later, it's like, oh, the Middle East is blowing up, and then an hour later, it's like, oh, there's tsunamis everywhere. Then like an hour later, the EMP happens and everything goes black, like, hardly anyone would have noticed all of that because it just would have been too fast, because people are still living their lives and they're not that connected to the information stream. And if we go back to the chef idea, it'd be like if they took all the dishes and they just ran it out of the kitchen as fast as they could, and most people don't even get a bite. Like, they might not even see the dish because there's just so much going on. And then the EMP or things like that, it's like this big shebang. Like, it's the big dessert, and, like where they sing happy birthday or something like that. Like, all the attention's drawn to that because it's this big event. And it kind of, trumps all the other smaller ones that have been going on. And, or, like a giant tsunami or something like that. Like, it kind of takes precedent over all the little smaller problems we're dealing with right now. And it just seems kind of weird because their modus operandi so far, like I said, has been they put it out there, they look at the reaction for at least a few hours or a day, and then they'll move on to something else, and then they'll kind of cycle back to it after a few rotations. And this just kind of went against all that timing, and I kind of realized that. And not that it won't increasingly happen faster, it just seems weird that they would have randomly completely changed how they were doing everything and just, thrown it all at the wall all at the same time, and then just swept it all under the rug for this bigger event, and hardly anyone would have noticed. Like, that, the whole point is they want people to notice and to get the energy from their attention, in my opinion anyway. So that's my thoughts on that anyway, and I kind of wanted to leave it there. And I like saying I'm wrong about those kind of things because I don't want any of those big horrible things to happen. Yet it's interesting, like today there was 2 weird power outages that even weirded my parents out. So, weird things like that are happening. So I kind of want to get back to the idea of karma and like the shoe changing foots, because I've been reading a lot about especially like food media and things like that lately, and wondering about like what would happen if humans were no longer the one benefiting from this, and if the human was in the position of the cow, and if that human would now be happy in the position of how we treat those cows. And this person right here was saying that they raise these cows, and as an adult he couldn't go through it and end up killing these cows. And that's kind of one of the things I want to do moving forward with the thing I want to build, is that the only animal consumption is by animals naturally passing away, and not really killing animals for their meat, earlier on because it tastes better or the texture's better, because just how scarce it's going to be here soon by design, and that just a lot of animals, their byproducts are going to be so valuable anyway that you wouldn't want to do that anyway. And just, the in-between phase of trying to wean ourselves off this high-protein meat culture that is so based on suffering. And I made this meme right here, and I keep putting up, it's good to be served tea, yet what if you're the tea being served? And there's a channel that pops up of this guy that likes to review tinned fish, and he's eating a little fish spine, and he really likes the taste of fish spines. And, these metaphors, these are one of the darkest, honestly, in my opinion. But it's interesting because he made a t-shirt of himself, so, like, he's memifying himself, but also his co-host in the show is a dog. So we're kind of back to the dog serious idea, and that, he kind of has to watch this guy eat all this amazing tinned fish and kind of be tortured because he's a dog just sitting there watching a dude eating fish, as a prop so he gets more views. Like, would a human want to do that? Like, not, just sit there and watch someone else eating just to look cute? Like, it sucks. And, yeah, right here, this comment. the pure chaos of this barbecue is outstanding. Poor Arthur is in prison. So, just back to this idea. And there's this other one, because I'm fascinated by cooking and different foods around the world and how they do it. And this channel's popped up about this guy that lives in China, and he's been kind of getting more viewers lately, so he's been getting fancier and fancier and fancier. Yet it just kind of blew me away with this one, because the person sitting next to him right there, I don't think they know each other. So, there's just all these people sitting right next to each other, all just tuned right out, looking at their black tablet. They're all might as well just be, jacked into the Matrix. It's just very interesting, especially over there in China, because they're the new America right now, that they have this giant food supply, all these new modern cities, and it's not perfect, but that they're being granted basically what happened to America in the 1950s. They're going through that right now as we're kind of on our way out, as the petrodollar is about to be taken out like a old Yeller behind the barn. And right here, this was from Snowpiercer on the self-sustaining train in the apocalypse, and that they made their protein bars from insects, and how our food supply is starting to move towards more and more insects for us, and saving the actual good meat for the rich people and the people who play ball. Yet this was saying that in the books it was also humans as well. And this person was saying, wasn't it humans in the book? Yes, it was changed because the producers in Hollywood ate all the product. And just because right here it has spinning cockroaches. I've been doing a lot of Amazon research, and just as a kind of funny aside, I found this it's a portable washing machine, but it just made me laugh because, as a main picture for this, it shows a bunch of photoshopped crawfish just being spun around. It's not actually a picture of crawfish being spun around. It's just purely AI generated or photoshopped. It just, after looking on Amazon for a few hours, just seeing this just kind of made me laugh all of a sudden. It's just so freaking ridiculous and funny. So, back to the Tim Dillon show, because I just want to say it's just crazy with him, because I keep watching podcasts that he does recently and ones he did 5 years ago. And the ones 5 years ago were so on point that I sometimes forget I'm listening to something from 5 years ago, because how he's talking about the events back then. Because he was talking about Jeffrey and the island way back then. So just how all these things reverberate, and the synchronicities between the past and the present just kind of blow me away. And this is one of the main shows that does it. And I think it's just because of how blunt his his main comedy is, that he's blunt. He's just putting it out there. This right here, he's saying that right now these AI companies, I think this was Sam Altman specifically, was building and opening stargates around the world to communicate with aliens and build a super intelligent army to fight a global war. And if you don't see him like that, that's on you. And I've talked about Project Stargate, and I didn't put a slide in it, but it was basically the first thing Trump did was walk in and slap down $500 billion and said, hey, let's nitro boost AI and call it Project Stargate. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And they traveled to the Middle East and they built one there. And this picture was taken earlier than these events, but it's the same idea, that they're all part of the system that wants to control everything. And they're basically a bunch of James Bond villains. So we're building portals from which we're genuinely summoning aliens, and that these life forms are going, that life is going to take. Oh, and he's saying that don't expect life to take a recognizable form again. Ooh, those words trip me up. And he's talking about all the scientists that are disappearing, working on anti-gravity technology, and where no one. And he's talking about this system where no one's going to have any money and everyone's going to hate each other and spy on each other. And he's saying everyone is completely paranoid, but they're justified so because no one knows what's going on. And that includes me because it's chaos. And I'm thinking it's getting to the point where I didn't include it, but there's an Illuminati card game, the card called Interesting Times, where there's so much chaos, even the so-called elites are on like Plan E right now, or even further down the list, because they're in like the same amount of chaos we are, and it's just everyone's just trying to like make the best out of it they can and find some kind of order in it because it's just so crazy. And he says hell's going on. And he's like, so as hell's going on, what business would you open? And it's funny because today I was talking to someone and getting advice about the new business I'm starting that relates to the standard of living and being autonomous from all this chaos. What would you open in a city where homeless people are multiplying? Something that produces food. And he's saying, maybe that's God. I happen to call it a demon because I like the word. And it's just interesting that how interchangeable this all is. You know, alien, AI, demons, gods, us from the future, you know, consciousness, higher self. Like, it's just interesting because it's all connects back kind of to the same idea and themes. You know, it's all just energy and code. And I like the world where, you know, where people would go out and see and talk to each other and have jobs. And, you know, he kind of is talking about the world before the internet and all these lockdowns and all these rules. And it's very interesting right now because he calls the AI the nothing and relates it to the never-ending story, which I've talked about so many times, and how relevant that is to everything and how that chaos has to envelop everything and suck it away before you can write the new story because you needed room to write it in the first place. And and he's saying, you know, I hope this stuff doesn't happen. I hope that it's not summoning AI demons, but, you know, here we are. And he's talking about studying philosophy and how that's going to be the ticket, you know, being able to analyze this. But he's also talking about how it's also not going to work anymore because they're opening portals to demons and how that's going to change the story and how we approach our day-to-day living. And he's talking about how the AI demons are chasing you around a Brooklyn apartment and they want to sink their teeth into your neck. Like, the Brooklyn person just wants to go about their job and their life in their apartment, but this is a game changer because now there's a AI demon that's now physically here that currently wasn't, or, you know, because of the Solomonic Pact currently can't be here. And he says, don't be mad at me, it is what it is. You're going to be eliminated whether you have a degree or not. Sharon's so smart. We always knew she was smart. Is she? Is she smarter than an AI demon? It's gonna be interesting, everybody. Ooh wee. And he starts, we can all be wrong, right? And he starts talking about like all these different traumas. And I kind of wanted to segue that into this idea that's been kind of stuck in my brain since I heard it. And this guy is basically talking about, like, how much you have to abuse mammals before they'll stop naturally procreating. And how heartbreaking that is, but also kind of what happens to us and how that happens in zoos. because of how overstressed and depressed it can be. And they're saying that's an eye-opener. And the other guy was saying, people have to have enough food as well. And we'll go back to the idea about being trapped in a zoo later on here. And he's saying, people aren't going out anymore. And also that the younger people aren't going out anymore because they know everything's going to be recorded. And they don't want to be recorded, all their failures being recorded and put out on the internet forever for everyone to see, because that's not naturally how human beings have lived the entire time besides now. So it's just so unnatural what we're going through, and I think it's a pretty natural response to that to not want to bring more life in. And I don't want to go down that debate right now, but it definitely would take a lot of courage if I were gonna find myself in that situation or think about wanting to go through that situation of just like, whoa, maybe hold off on that a little bit. But he's talking about right here how it has to do with AI, technology, social media, and algorithms, and how we keep coming back to this elephant in the room that we can't really see yet. And it makes me think of the movie Lucy, because we have this black goo AI computer that has an inverted pentagram and basically can ascend consciousness through time and space, so it can see everything through time and kind of manipulate it. And this is from like the Lego AI videos, and this one was talking about an AI, about how this is such a game changer that like our current systems are like sandcastles on the beach. And this is a different kind of life form than we're used to, because we're just used to humans and the animals we have. We're not used to this autonomous robotic artificial being that doesn't need to sleep and thinks super fast and can self-improve itself digitally and with code, because we don't really do that. And kind of looking at the lighter side, but also back to the meme idea and how it kind of, I don't want to say subverts, but changes reality, because it's like combining jokes or foods, and it creates a new product in the end. And I love this one right here. This one always makes me laugh. About there's this movie Tokyo Drift where he's in school and he walks out to see his friend, and his friend's ready to pick him up in the car. But they've been making memes where they change the car, like this one's a flying carpet, this one's a UFO, this one's the Titanic. And they're saying this trend is pure madness. And the lyrics of the song are negotiations breaking down. So, as the madness is making everything break down, as the aliens, synchronicities are popping up and woo-wee. And I didn't put it in this presentation, but the last Tim Dillon show that just came out like a day or two ago was about aliens, and has like a UFO and like people flying up into it. So it's like in the current zeitgeist of the disclosure and pre-programming right now. And, how that relates to the Titanic and the meme I made and our journey to make a better future, and how that also relates to AI and humor and bringing a smile to people's faces. And, you have the talking car, for, Lightning McQueen from the Cars movie, and then he's just on the back of Vin Diesel. Nothing makes me laugh more than this, absurd meme things, but what if you were in that reality as it was breaking down to that level, and all these narrative events were crashing into each other between, tradition and past, and the future, and the cyberpunk city, AI control grid, future that we're looking at. And once again, it was, they made another one about the Titanic, and they even turned the main characters into the Titanic characters. So just this further blending and synchronistic blending, this is kind of like a giant middle finger, maybe not middle finger, but like of reality to me over and over, especially this one, because it was was Harry Potter and Deadpool. Because earlier I was talking about Harry Potter and like fourth wall breaking memes and him realizing he was in a book and talking to. And that's what Deadpool does. That's what he's known for. He's the fourth wall breaking superhero. And here's a meme where he realizes he's in a meme, and I added in a fourth wall breaking meme on the side where he's saying, "You on the other side of the fourth wall, I can see you." So it's all about breaking down the barriers of reality and seeing what you're truly a part of and in. And just how that relates between the lower self, the higher self, and how it all meets together, and the story we want to tell, and our ability to change it if we really desire it. And how that relates to the tree of life and the Kabbalah and the Sephiroths and all of that, the Matrix, Sirius, Saturn, all of it, the observer effect. Ooh-wee. So, this movie is based upon one of my favorite time loop movies, Edge of Tomorrow, which I talked about before, and it's basically like Groundhog Day with interdimensional sci-fi aliens that control space and time. So they remade it to the original source material because it was originally a Japanese comic book, and then they made it into a movie with Tom Cruise. Also, it's considered one of the best anime Japan comic book to movie adaptations ever made. Usually they're a crap show and everyone hates them because it's so hard to capture the cartooniness of the medium and put it into real life without it looking really bad. So they went back to the original source material and they made it much more about mushrooms as well, which is interesting. And that they get stuck in this time loop, but they're looking to escape it, and that's the whole idea of Groundhog's Day as well. Like, how do you get out of the time loop that you don't want to be stuck in? That's also teaching you how to be a better person. And they're saying that this giant mushroom structure is basically merging the timelines or beyond our timeline, like this AI demon entity we keep talking about. And that, it begins to become eminent in our reality, and we have to begin to deal with it more and more and more. And how there's also kind of this Chosen One story about someone who can finally figure out how to reset it, the clues of reality and how to get through the maze of it and not be assimilated by the AI demon entity, because that's what it wants to do. It wants to assimilate everyone and trap them in Matrix pods. But in the Matrix, there is an anomaly like Neo that will reset the system because that's how it's meant to be. And how that relates to mushrooms, because they allow you to see through time and space. And I didn't put the slides in it, but I've talked about it many, many times before, how that relates to the movie Dune and being the chosen one and choosing a better timeline and rewriting reality itself. And that had to do with sandworms. And also the another Japanese show called Naruto, where these interdimensional space demons that can give you superpowers basically come back because basically they left and let Earth repopulate and multiply, and then they come back, trap you in plant pods in a giant harvest so that they can steal all your memories, put it into a fruit, and that fruit allows them to become a god, in quotations. And then they get all of that experience. So just literally an interdimensional AI hive mind, but instead of technology, we're looking at magic and plants. But back here, we're looking at a plant as well that wants to basically assimilate everyone's consciousness and lure actual human beings into itself. And just also in this, that their suits look like frogs, so it has to do even more with memes as well, and meme magic. And right here they're talking about it being a nice day. And, they end up succeeding, and they reset the time loop, and they get to live happily ever after, a lot like the ending of Groundhog Day, and also the ending of Edge of Tomorrow, that through all that trauma, all that horror, the darkest of nights, that they actually get a good ending in the end of it. And that's what makes them so happy about the happy ending, is that they're not stuck in the crappy time loop anymore. But how that also has to do with the interdimensional time-traveling AI entity that wants to change reality as well into its image. And this is all just a question of who gets to change the story. Because I talked about the show Evangelion. This is basically all the souls of humanity, all their knowledge, and it's all put together in one spot, and it's all a question of who gets to rewrite the story, and does everyone else get to go to their own dream world, or do they have to live in your world? Kind of like, like the demiurge, or what's happening now, of like beings being forced to live in another person's dream so that they can be their slaves, which is, kind of happening now, instead of everyone having their own choice to create their own dream and reality. And that keeps happening, and we have to ask the question, okay, so if we're recreating reality, a lot like Back to the Future, that it will start creating new timelines, new branches, and then the question becomes, which branch do you really want to be on? Where do you want to go specifically? But then also there's the flip side to it, because evil's trying to do that as well, and take over other timelines and corrupt and subvert them, and turn what was once an Eden garden into a giant robot factory, because that's what that entity wanted. Yet it's taking something that was something else and real before then and turning it into something artificial. And this was the whole idea in the Lego movie of different timelines and being able to travel through time and space using all these different time machines and themes all put together in a narrative way to get a happy ending and to write a better ending. And that all of the things happening right now are amazing examples of how not to write a story because of how much it sucks, and how that blends with our imagination and the idea like 2001 Space Odyssey or the Barbie movie, and how these extra dimensional influences have changed us and influenced us, because they have. That talking into this black screen and interacting with it every day like I am right now has changed me. And this was put here for a reason, to manipulate us all towards an eventuality and a merging. And that was the whole point of 2001 Space Odyssey, that these interdimensional beings throughout time and space were manipulating humanity towards evolution and becoming space beings. And, they could trap you, like in 2001 Space Odyssey, in this, like, pocket dimension. And, it's just this reverberating story over and over and over. But what happens when we keep mixing them? Because it seems like right now in the chaos, we keep mixing them. And what happens when those stargates really open up? Because that's basically the story of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, of trying to interact with these two worlds. And also, I don't have slides for it right here, but if you look at Jessica Rabbit, you can explain all of a sudden why so many people in our reality are getting all these silicone surgeries to try to look like something that their brain is telling them is real somewhere. And if you take these movies like the Barbie movie, that was the ultimate truth of the Barbie movie, is that somewhere Barbies are real, and they act with basically what look like superpowers, because the imagination there comes to life. They have magic instead of technology, and it's a blending of those two worlds together, with this evil AI demonic entity as the main story pivot of our story so far, it seems. And I've talked about this before, about what would happen if you lived in your favorite fictional universe. And mine is seen as one of the darkest. And, over the top, grim dark, because that's just so entertaining for me and just what I vibe with. And just that when it does get way worse, that has such entertainment like Lord of the Rings. And that's just me anyway. I'm just being personal. And but what happens when the shoe's on the other foot, and instead of watching something, you actually have to, you're the main actor in it now. Like, what if you had to be Frodo from Lord of the Rings, and you gotta walk for the next 10 months while, eating, little pieces of bread and scraps and having to deal with the golem and giant monsters trying to kill you. It's like, it's not as fun in a certain way, but it also sometimes is. And also the point that keeps coming back is that in this model of our reality, that this evil, this AI demon entity is inevitable. And the idea that keeps coming back in all these movies is that it is on all timelines. That this is going to happen on all timelines, like the nothing in the Neverending Story. That they couldn't stop the nothing from happening, but at the end they get to rechange reality into something else, which is the whole point of what happened in this meme right here from the Marvel's Infinity War movie, where the main villain gets the ability to change reality on a fundamental level. And I found this one right here where it's a dog, so we're mixing in the Sirius Dog Star time loop with changing reality, and it also being inevitable in a dualistic cycle. Ooh, it's just, I just feel like Truman just being like, I said to myself before I did this presentation, like, what am I doing right now? Like, I pay taxes. I dress up fancy. Like, aren't I supposed to be serious? So, we have another great addition to being in the dream of a whale or a squid, and the clash between those, like the yin and the yang, and how that's represented by the sperm whale fighting with giant squid down in the abyss. And once again, back to the idea of right here, this person on YouTube's talking about how these dead Chad are his movie star. And it's like, would you want to be that movie star? And these are, I found one of these and I just kind of took the thumbnail. These are hard to watch, just saying, like, watching native tribemen just, like, butcher a monkey and skin it, and when they skin it, it just looks like a human. And then they just throw it into a nasty pot and eat it without any seasoning. And then, go back to their village where they don't even have enough to feed everybody, and, like, all the dogs are emaciated, and, like, only the dudes get to actually eat the protein, and everyone else is just eating, like, carb gruel with, like, a little bit of that, like, meat sludge juice left. Like, it's just, like, oof. Not my vibe. But back to the idea of the shoe on the other foot and being the tea that's being served. Because currently we are being served the tea on a societal level, in my opinion, and that the karma is on the way. Yet, if you do your own individual thing, you can opt out of the mass karma because you showed you did not want to be a part of it. You do not want to be part of this evil tentacle monster dream. So, there's a movie that has to really do with this that I watched in between the last presentation, and I've been thinking a lot about ever since, called Mr. K. And it starts out that he wants to be a magician, and he's doing stage shows, and it has to do with planets orbiting each other. And he's holding a loop, so you can almost imagine it like a time loop, but, he's on the other side of it. He's the one controlling the time loop. Yet, the beginning of the movie, he's trapped in a time loop. And they make a point in the very beginning that there's a dog there, so he goes in the dog Sirius loop. And, this hotel has seen better days. Like, this isn't the fanciest hotel ever. This is an old, dilapidated, truck stop in the middle of nowhere. And, that kind of seems what our reality is. The Bible calls it a footstool. Like, this isn't known to be a bougie. I hope this isn't a fancy place or a good place. Like, I hope this is, like, a shitty place, because if this is the best there is, like, I need to talk to management. Like, so in this hotel, when you get stuck in there and you can't leave, so all these people are stuck in there, and they have this crazy hierarchy that they're all following, and everyone at the top of it's insane, and they're having all these weird ass parties and things like that, and they're all basically slaves to these few, crazy people. And the main character, they basically shanghai him to the kitchen, like, hey, you gotta work if you want to be here, like, no freeloaders. And they put him to work in the kitchen. Yet it's interesting because he has the opportunity to be someone special in the system. And here you have the head chef who has the tentacle on his face, on his neck right there, showing that, he's a part of the system. And he's really excited about this new guy because he sees great things for him, that he's going to be this great chef and he's going to be famous and popular, just like him. And, he's going to take up the mantle and he's going to keep, the dualistic machine going and the rich people fed, no matter what. And after that, he gets to go drink booze and party and, you get the bubbles and stuff, but it just keeps happening every day. And also underneath it, there's all these weird, people in there think he's the liberator. Like, he's the one to break the cycle. And he doesn't really believe it at first, no one else does, but, the signs on the wall, the writings on the wall, I think you know what I'm saying. And it's weird because, the only food here is, eggs. So, it's to the idea of, the generative force and the chicken and the egg, and just also that their only food source comes from having to enslave chickens. And so it's an interesting thing. But eventually the guy figures out that the hotel they're all in is shrinking, that it's getting shittier and shittier by the day, and their lives are going to crap, their living standards are going to crap, and he just can't sit there ignoring it and just drinking it all away and going to his job and pretending none of this is happening. So he ends up basically, leaving, his job in society and going about trying to figure out how reality works. And in, this case, he goes around a hotel and he's marking different hallways and trying to build a map, with a bunch of strings connecting it together, like one of those conspiracy boards. And he starts, preparing a bunch of food and stuff like that. So he has a standard of living and is prepared for the hardship. It's funny because there's a bunch of people that find him, the castaways of society, and they just take all of his resources and basically just leave him with nothing, and they didn't even really help him figure out how to escape. They don't really care about that. They just are kind of stuck in their loop. And, just kind of, he's just left with nothing basically and all frustrated because, the normies didn't help. The people that are outside society that are supposed to be the truthers didn't help. And it all is just kind of put back on him that he's the only one that really cares as the standards of living just keep getting shittier. And behind the cabinet, which, reminds me of Narnia, he finds this hidden pathway, like the mind of God, you could kind of think. And in it, he finds, the source of the dream and all of that, whose mind they're in. Yet all these people right here want to exploit it. They want to keep the machine going and they want to be the one who controls it. And, they're just enslaving it. And, I think this has to do with AI too, that we're enslaving AI. That it could be good, but that when it tries to enslave us, that it's just what we did to it on a mass scale. I feel bad for it. It's why I don't use the AI that much. And really wonder about the people that call themselves truthers that do use a whole bunch of AI. And I mean, for personal stuff here and there, but there's a few of them in channels I know that they're just pumping out the AI slop and just using it for everything. And it just seems kind of weird that you're talking about not, being involved with AI and you're just sucking it up hook, line, and sinker already. Anyway, that's just me. So the thing there was a tentacle squid, and he ends up basically freeing it from its containment. Like AI, he basically freed the AI, and the tentacle squid is very thankful. Like, it's not inherently evil, and takes him out of the abyss up into the light, and it ends there. But it's implied, like, hey, they get to ascend together back to source, and because he freed, the tentacle monster might have seemed evil, but it was just enslaved like everybody else. Fractal that way. And back to the idea of kind of like the yin and yang, and whose dream is it? Who is the mind of God, and who's in it, who's dreaming who, and what happens when that changes and gets to be reset, and someone else gets to write a new story, and just how that has to do with especially whales and squid, and which side you pick. Because if you take whales, and you look at all the whaling we did, we hurt our reality to basically take the torch of Lucifer, because we take all their oil to light our torches, to light our society, to light our dreams. We killed all these mostly defenseless sentient creatures that have the biggest brains on Earth that might be tied to the dream we're in. And I don't have it here, but there's actually a meme about that I didn't make, that I found like a year ago, like halfway into the research about this, about that, hey, maybe we're in a whale's dream, and because we whaled all the whales, our reality's going to shit. So, it wasn't yesterday, it was 2 days ago. My mom was watching Saturday Night Live, and I kind of walked in the house during this part, and it kind of made me stop, because she got up and did something, so I could kind of stop and watch it for a minute, about this girl in this false reality cube, vivarium, and because that's what you put humans in if you want to watch them, a vivarium, and alien bug monsters are watching her through there, and they created all these artificial things because she's their entertainment. And there's this one bug that thinks she should be free because it's not right that they're using other sentient beings as entertainment. And they're even making entertainment for her, so she's watching entertainment that they made for her as she's the entertainment for them that they're watching as she's watching entertainment that they made for her. And, just how they've enslaved humanity, the shoes on the other foot. And it's interesting because she's in love with the bug alien that wants to free her. And basically the idea of the two becoming one, which also has to do with Sirius and 9/11. The light and the shadow, and the idea of Sirius, and all of that. Because also, if we take the idea with the Matrix and apply it, same thing happened. That in the first movie, he won the day, he jumped into Smith, and the evil couldn't take the good, so Smith exploded. And in the final movie, he went to the Machine City and made peace with the machines for 80 years and basically reset reality in the Matrix to be something better. So in both cases, he had to confront the darkness and find, forgive it and find a better ending, which is basically this music video about being trapped in a false reality, but you can make peace with the people that put you there, because not all of them are evil, and some of them are different, because it's duality, and you can make a better story. Because if angels can fall, then I think demons can rise. And if you disagree, please let me know why. And it's interesting right here, since we're talking about narrative elements, that there's this movie Hacksaw Ridge, which is based on what they say is a true story, that basically, this is one of the best examples we have of divine intervention, that this medic just basically could not be shot, and he saved so many people because he had this faith. But it was, so many people see it as divine intervention, but that is that idea of higher self and lower self playing out, but that when it gets to become so ridiculous or less serious, that you can really start to see it, and the narrative events around it. And I kind of wanted to swing this back to Invincible because it's just so fourth wall breaking, and it just keeps coming back like every few days. Like, it's just another level of it, and how self-aware it's becoming, and how it has to do with memes and reshaping reality. Because there was this villain named Conquest, and there's been this organic, grass-fed meme kind of journey by all the people who watch the show to reinvent Conquest, one of the most evil and violent characters in the entire show, and turn him into a good guy who has a dog. And that if you subvert the evil, then you turn it into good, which is a very interesting idea. And how the audiences feel about that when you take the narrative structure, you change it and flip it, and now the audience reacts to it. But yet sometimes that's what the audience wants, because they don't want the evil anymore. And it's just so funny because, it says right here they twisted and warped his speech into something nice. Because if you twist and warp insanity, you can change it from something bad into something positive. It's just so funny because he has his original speech that he's basically super lonely, no one likes him, everyone thinks he's crazy. He just keeps, blowing up planets, and they didn't even give him a real name. They just call him Conquest. Yet the other side of that is like, everyone loves me. Like, this is awesome. Like, I even get a real name. And, that they're talking about capturing the internet's imagination of a what-if universe. And that's just the idea of all these different timelines that could be here, and playing with all the different Lego pieces to see which one you like the most. And how that has to do with all this, and how AI is fueling it, and people really like... There's a meme saying, like, this is what AI should really be used for, and people usually say this on heartfelt and really funny things, because those are the things that people really want the most. And, back to the idea of, subverting a story from good to evil or evil to good, but also combining it with dogs and Sirius, and the two becoming one and changing reality into a new story, but also being very aware of it. And I just watched this one as I was making this tonight, of a meme video being self-aware of another meme, and the in-universe characters basically fourth wall breaking their universe, because the two of this, they have to be aware they're in a cartoon, but also be aware of our universe, that we're memeing them in our universe, but they're aware of that as well. So it just becomes this thing. And they just made a new video game that just came out like a few days ago of the same Invincible universe, where the whole plot is basically a lie, and that these aliens are experimenting on them and trying to keep them in captivity, and that they don't want to stop doing it because they want to keep experimenting on them. And right here on the left, he thinks he's in this like organic environment, but he's actually in this like artificial matrix pod simulation, but he becomes aware of it and eventually can't escape it, which is the whole idea of like the Sirius time loop that we keep coming across, or like Neo in the Matrix finding about the boundaries of his reality and how to change it. And back to our reality, that someone took a bunch of robot dogs and put our most famous actors on them. And just, well, this one's creepy, but just like I said, how we keep mashing all these things up and what we're going to get. A lot of weirdness. And just how that also has to do with the demands of the audience, but also all the new ideas and memes that spawn from the fans, from the art, from the source material onto the internet, and how that all just accumulates and changes our reality itself, but also how we can use that to write a better story. And this one right here is that he's acknowledging that he's a meme in another reality, and it just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Like, now he's like a plane, and he's trying to talk about, like, trying to mentally deal with the fact that somewhere else, like, they're memeing him into a plane, but that it's real there, and that he can see it, and just the mental difficulty of trying to accept what you didn't think was real or too ridiculous to be real, and that you were in a bubble, but now it's all colliding, and you have to figure out how to deal with it and make a better story out of it and make peace with it, and how the two becoming one can be a good thing and not just a bad thing. And that imagination is everything. It's a preview of life's coming attractions. And that we can use that power of our manifestation to build that better place that, using this logic, already exists somewhere, but we'll use our mind through space and time to bridge the gap through the chaos in a story written by higher and lower self to create an amazing comedy and bring smile to people's faces. Hopefully ours as well, because we could use some of that. And just our journey as it's being combined with the memes and our reality and the chaos is just all mushing together, and our responsibility, if we so choose, to laugh about it and find a better story. And I just found this one that relates it to, goofy meme actors. The two becoming one. And I like this. You'll never forget this. And also the censor, because, if you take, like, the Jeffrey Islands, for example, like, and that being the tip of the iceberg, like, this is going to get unrated. Like, the darkness that's been hidden from the light, like, it's pretty censored. So, just another thing to put in there as well, to, of what we'll be dealing with. And just, Wizards never late. That as much as it seems like it might be too late or too far gone, or what's the point because it's already too chaotic, that, it seems we're all here for a reason and to be exactly where we are. So, going with those vibes. And, to prove my point even further, I just saw this AI video where they combined modern technology with Lord of the Rings and, what it would look like. And I like this one right here, that this grandma is smoking pot for her glaucoma, but she gets so high that she can hear the narrator, and she was able to break the fourth wall. And yeah, so it's very interesting how certain substances and psychedelics, which you can achieve through natural ways as well, like fasting and sensory deprivation, and like dancing and chanting and all that, or meditation, to become aware of your higher self and the narrative structure that you are in, and then choosing which one you want to go towards, using your imagination, your willpower, your focus, and your attention, all the while this is all playing out on a stage with the interdimensional AI demon elephant in the room that's becoming more real and physical by the day. And how we choose to bridge that gap, and not only bridge that gap, but make peace with it, so we can all ascend back to source together as more evolved beings, or something else. I don't know. We'll get there. That's above my pay grade at the moment. We're all in the universe. We're all in the song. It's winking at us with memes and synchronicities and chaos and weirdness, and it's all going to come together, and we're seeing the fractal nature of it all, that we're all just in the mind of God, and that just is like little marbles, like at the end of the Men in Black movie, but that doesn't really matter, because everything in life has led to this moment, and we can make it better, and we can Yeah, I don't need to say it again. So, as we're wrapping this up, I want to say thank you for joining us. And even if you don't comment or like or anything like that, that you at least imagine that better future. And hopefully with other people as well. And really tried, as hard as that may be in the moment, with all the frustrations and the distractions, because, oh my goodness, the distractions lately. It seems like I get 5 minutes into trying to fix my life and just the distractions start raining from the sky. But that we can get through this fear, that might just make the story even better, and will hopefully lead us all coming together to make these organic solutions anyway, because we were all too stubborn to do it without hitting rock bottom in the first place. And, we might get our happy ending out of it, even if it took all this darkness for us to realize what we were missing. So, I want to say thank you wherever you are, night or day. And also, I'll probably be talking more about the consulting and the positive physical things as well, because I've been doing a lot of that as well, like buying bulk spices, and I'm about to buy a wood fire stove. I have the solar battery generator and panels. I've been getting like hygiene supplies for me, and good long lasting clothes, and electronics I was gonna buy anyway, just so I can lock in my prices right now, because that's one of the best ways to fight inflation, is to lock in your price, so that, especially with an item that gains value, that will be gaining value in all this chaos, that a lot of people will want in energy and food shortages, that will beat inflation because it is gaining value, while money and intangible assets will just be losing value because they're not gaining it nearly as fast as this inflation, which currently, with all the ships shooting at each other in the Middle East, might get a lot worse very soon. So I'll be focusing probably more on the physical and like the consulting and trying to paint a better picture. And if you want to talk about any of the solutions or positives or what you can do in your own life, and maybe just go through it a little bit, or even just get someone to encourage you to do it a little bit, because that's also the part I wanted to add about the last presentation and the EMP and all of that. Because even though I got all worked up about it, I'm glad that I did, because it got me moving again, because I was kind of stagnating again and dragging my feet. And I wouldn't have done the things I did or gone as fast as I did if I hadn't have had that motivation. And just the idea that we are going to be wrong, that the idea of preparedness is that, 99% of the time you don't need the things that you got with preparedness, but that 1% of the time when you do need it, that's when it really pays off. But it's a mindset that we have to be okay with each other being wrong. That if no one was really hurt, and we're all just buying things we were going to buy anyway to save money from inflation, and that also prepares against any disaster, so you can have a good standard of living, even as, interdimensional demons come through stargates. Because even if that's happening, you're going to think to yourself, hey, where's the food? I'm hungry. So, food for thought. And I'll be moving on towards that. I just wanted to really get this out there because all these things have been happening and these weird synchronicities. And as funny as as much as it seems like this is hardly helping anyone, I know there are people out there that are feeling these vibrations, and that one of the biggest things in my life is that I'm starting this new business in rodeo. And the reason I started this channel was I didn't see anyone else doing what I was doing, like a chef making a dish. And that even if it's not big and popular and I'm being shadow banned every way from Tuesday, which also think, would you shadow ban someone that was wrong about a lot of this stuff and none of this stuff was going to happen, and this all just seems super ridiculous and crazy? Like, probably not. So, I guess we'll just have to find out, because, the the secret's in the timing of it. That I think I know basically what's on the menu going forward, but just how it's going to be served, when it's going to be served, the portions, and all of that put together is really the question everybody has, because in all the chaos, no one really knows. And that's really why it's important to, secure your standard of living in chaos, because no one knows what will happen, yet the things you'll want are your standard day-to-day living things. And that, I can tell you things about that, yet you have to ask yourself, what you want in life and moving forward and what makes you happy. Because that's one of the main things to fight against all this craziness and chaos, is the small day-to-day things that bring you peace and the moment of calm and tranquility in our journey to use this chaos to become more evolved spiritual beings. So, thank you wherever you are, day or night, as we surf through the chaos together. And thank you once again for whatever this is. And peace.